Good morning, Yidden. We are on Kof Yud Gimel Amud Beis 113b. Yeah, 113b. Yeah. The Gemara is in the middle of collecting like kind of lists of things to do, things not to do, character traits, social commentary, bunch of lists that we've been going through. Most of them have been in groups of 3, but now the Gemara does it in 4. And then there's going to be in 5 and 6. So let's see. Arba Dvarim. There are, I don't know if you can see, I'm highlighting the words.
Yeah.
Arba, there are 4 types. Ein Hadas Seivaltan Seivaltan. There are 4 whom people can't stand them. I don't know if that's a direct translation, but that's what it means there. Ein Hadas, the mind cannot handle it. These people are very difficult to deal with, and it rubs people the wrong way. Now, what's interesting is not necessarily, as we're going to see, are these people. Okay, let's see. Elohein, and they're the following. Number 1, Dal Geya, an arrogant pauper, someone who's poor, but also arrogant. Like, he's going around boasting when doesn't have anything. Number 2,
doesn't come
sorry?
Nothing.
Some of it's quite a little comical in a cynical kind of way. We'll see. So Ashir, a wealthy person, Makrish, a wealthy person who's constantly denying anything he owes. You pledge this. No, what are you talking about? Say, like, his state of wealth allows him to deny, or at least his social status allows him to deny when people confront him about what he owes. And people like that, people can't handle that. Hold on a second, I just want to close my door.
Okay. Can you say the daf again?
Kof Yud Gimel Amud Beis 113b.
Okay.
So number 1, the 4 people that people can't handle. Number 1 is the pauper who's arrogant. Number 2 is the wealthy person who's constantly denying when people tell him he owes money. Number 3, Zaken Menaif, a promiscuous old man. What we call in English a creep. People can't handle it. It's a young guy who's promiscuous. Okay, he's young. Guy gets older and is behaving promiscuously. It becomes like people don't like to hang out with that kind of person. Number 3. And number 4 is Parnas Mizga Alat Tzibur. Parnas is like the community president, the community chairman. We've spoken about this in some of our history classes, that the Jewish community had a structure called the Kehila. And it lasted well into the 18th century, certainly, maybe even more, and in certain areas, certainly. And essentially, the Kehila structure was like you had a board of directors, and you had the executive director, and under the board of directors, you had a bunch of different subcommittees. One committee is the burial society to take care of the dead. You had the educational society. You had the welcoming guest society. People came to town. You had the Chevra Mishnayos, the society responsible for learning Mishnayos. You had the community, you had the society that was in charge of the shul. Different committees that were under this Kehila structure, and they charge a tax on the community. They tax the community to fund all of this social, all of this stuff, to fund all of this. And they were responsible for interceding with the local government. Whatever the local government was, they would intercede, right? So if the local government wanted X amount of taxes from the Jews, the Kehila, the board of directors, would decide how much each person should pay. A certain portion went to the government as per the government demand, and the rest of it went to go pay for their own services that the Jewish community provided for themselves. And this was in many areas, and very often the local landlords or kings were happy to have this structure because it meant they didn't have to deal with the Jews. Let the Jews live in their own life. They have their own courts, their own system, their own structure, and they pay taxes to the kings. That was a structure. So the Parnas is the community president. Okay, he's a community leader. So a community leader, Mizgal at Tzibur, literally means he like rules, he lords over the community, bechinam, for no reason. That's literally the translation.
Is there a difference between Gabbai and Parnas?
So Gabbai is the person who's responsible for the either the tax collection. Gabbai usually means tax collection in this context, either for the taxes in general. And so the Gabbai would report to the Parnas or would report to the board of directors, and the Parnas was on top of the board of directors. The board of directors were called the Zayin Tuva Ir. There were 7 people, and they were the 7 choicest of the community, the board of directors. Or the Gabbai could also be the person who was responsible for the charity fund specifically. And the Gemara describes 2 types of charity funds. That one that would hand out daily food, like a soup kitchen, and one that would hand out weekly funds. Not necessarily a soup kitchen, but like they would distribute every week to week, families who needed. So the Gabbai could have been one of those 2, but usually he was a tax collector.
Okay.
He was the guy either he or his dominions would like knock on your door and say, buddy, we sent you a bill that you have to pay X. Where is it? And you have to sit down and tell them, well, I don't know, I made a little less this month, so I can't afford as much. And they would consult with the Parnas, with the board of directors, to see if they can allow you to get a tax break. And then, or maybe they would find out that you did a good business deal and say, hey, you got to pay more taxes this time around. Something like that. Okay, so the Gemara now is saying there's 4 types of people that people can't deal with, that others can handle. The first one is the arrogant pauper. Number 2 is the wealthy person who's denying money he owes. The third was the older guy who's promiscuous, the creep. And number 4 is a Parnas, a board of directors, who lords over the community but freely. For no reason, he's lording over the community. What does that mean? So without any commentary, this is enough. A guy who takes advantage of his position and he's pushing people around just because he knows he can. People don't like that, obviously. Rajbam adds a nuance, which I think is interesting. He says he's the kind of guy who's he's ruling the community as he's supposed to, but when a distress happens, when some sort of stressful situation shows up for the community, he's not there to step in. So he's ruling the community when things are going well, and he's walking around, he's Mr. Leader in the community. But when things start to go not well, he's not there to show up and deal with the issue. Right? It's another kind of version for the kinds of people that we can't handle. Right? Okay, so this is the Gemara's list of 4 people that others can handle. It's quite interesting because here's what I think what's interesting here is not necessarily are these people insulting me particularly. The arrogant poor person isn't necessarily insulting me. Certainly the old man who's a creep isn't necessarily insulting me. And the rich person who's denying debts he has, the Gemara doesn't phrase it as if when I confront him about what he owes me, he denies it. That's not how the Gemara phrases it. He's talking about just a person in general who is rich and constantly denying what he's owed or what he owes. And the same thing with the leader who's leading freely but not stepping up to the plate when necessary. It's not a question necessarily of him affecting me personally. It's just personality traits that rub people the wrong way. It's personality types that just rub people the wrong way. Like an old man who's a creep, he's not necessarily bothering me. I don't have any sisters or daughters. He's not bothering me. Right? But it's just like, I don't like, we don't like these kind of people. Right?
Whether you have anything to do with him or not, it's no less of a creep.
Exactly. And I think the Gemara here is telling us like a social commentary. Like, be aware of, you might think, what's the big deal? Just be aware of the way people think about you. And don't become the person that you yourself know you would rub you the wrong way if you were in the other position. Don't become that kind of guy. It's perhaps what the Gemara is saying here. And the Gemara adds, V'yesh omrim, others say, we should add a 5th person to this list. Af also, hamegorish es ishtoi, one who divorces his wife. Pam rishona, once. Vishnia, and then divorces her a 2nd time. Umachzira, and then marries her again a 3rd time. So the guy divorces his wife, remarries her, divorces her again, and then remarries her again. People can't stand that kind of guy. Like, make up your mind. Either marry her or don't marry her. Marrying, divorce, the same woman, not different people. Marrying and divorcing the same woman. This is the 5th category that the Gemara says, that the Mishnah says here, some cannot add them to the list of people who others can't deal with. Okay, and we understand it's in the same context. It's just like what we call today in modern times creepy vibes. Makes people feel strange about you marrying the same woman, marrying, divorcing. It's like, come on. Okay, so the Gemara now comments and says, "Tana Kama." Now the original sage, who only put 4 on the list, why didn't he include number 5? This guy who's divorcing and remarrying and divorcing and remarrying. Why doesn't he include that in the list? So explains the Gemara, Zimna, because the original scholar on the original Tana, the first Tana only puts 4 on the list, doesn't feel that it's right to feel strange about someone who's marrying and remarrying the same woman. Because there are other considerations to think about. Namely, Zimna at times, Diksubasa Meruba. It cost him too much to divorce her. Her kasuba is too expensive. So he doesn't want to live with her. So he divorces her. But then it turns out it's just way too expensive to divorce her. So he remarries her. And then he can't stand living with her again. So he divorces her. But it's too expensive to divorce her. So he remarries her.
Wait, but aren't those each discrete contractual relationships? Once divorced, the ketubas due an owing, and then therefore remarrying is a whole new contract.
Good question. Actually, Rambam writes that you remarry with the same ksuba. You can remarry with the same ksuba.
Oh, really? Okay.
If there was no marriage in between, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Right.
That's interesting because
yeah,
seems
this
like
would be one consideration for why. Sorry.
It seems like it's a whole new marriage, a whole new set of contractual.
Yeah, but in modern times, you could think about this, where someone divorces, and there's a whole court battle over her trying to take half his wealth, and he's like, you know what, whatever, forget this divorce.
Yeah, but that's different. That's they didn't actually divorce.
So he remarries her.
Okay, so then he did get divorced.
Yeah, he did get divorced. I'm just saying that you can think of modern times why the
no, for sure. It's just cheaper to stay married than to go through the hassle and
exactly. So the Gemara says, so this Tanakama is saying the reason why I don't include this guy in a list of people or others are creeped out by is because there are other considerations. People understand marriage is complex.
No, understood. Yeah.
And therefore he doesn't include him on a list because there could be another consideration for why he's divorcing and remarrying. There could be a financial consideration. Inami, or perhaps here's another consideration why the guy would marry and remarry and divorce and remarry. Yesh loy banim mimena. He has children from her. They share children. V'loy motzi megarish lo, and he can't come to staying divorced from her for the children. So he can't. It's hard to live with her. Divorces, but then he sees his children suffering as a result. So, okay, let's bring our family back together, and he can't handle it and tries it again. So, in other words, the Tanakama is essentially saying, I'm only including 4 on the list, not this 5th one, because the 5th one, it's not fair to for people to be weirded out by him. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't understand what's happening in a marriage. It's a complex. Marriage is very complex, and there are all kinds of considerations, children, financial, and therefore that would explain why the person went through divorce and remarriage, and therefore don't write him off as someone that we can't handle.
So the question is not. Sorry, go ahead.
No, the first 4, there's no excuse for it. There's no excuse for it. Just rubs people the wrong way when a poor person is arrogant, when a rich guy is denying what he owes, when there's an older man who's a creep, who's a promiscuous older man, and finally the leader, the partners, the community president who's taking advantage of his position. That nobody can handle, and there's no excuse for that. Whereas the guy who's divorced and remarried, at least according to the second opinion, according to the first opinion, which doesn't include him in the list, there are other considerations that we should think about, and therefore it's not appropriate to write him off as someone no one else can handle. Sorry, what do you want to say?
No, I was saying, so the question is not so much why the Tanaim didn't add it, but why, or excluded it, but rather why the Amoraim decided to include it, if knowing.
No, okay, good question. So there are 2 opinions in the Mishnah. There was a list of 4, and then there was others who added a 5th. And the Gemara is asking, why did the first person not add that 5th?
Okay.
Amoraim are asking about the Mishnah, why the first sage in the Mishnah didn't have 5 on the list and only had 4.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Right? Whereas the second opinion says, no, there's no excuse for remarriage, figure it out. Okay, back to our list. This is quite interesting. Chamisha dvarim, there are 5 things. Tziva Canaan as Banav. Canaan commanded his children. Canaan is the grandson of Noach, the progenitor of the Canaanites. Right? Noach has 3 children, Shem, Cham, and Yafes. And Cham has a son named Canaan. And he's the progenitor of the children who occupy what was Canaan, which is today the land of Israel, of course, and that region. So the Mishnaic generation would have had a lot of interaction with the Canaanites. So the Gemara is commenting on 5 things that Canaan commanded his children. As Rashbam explains it, the Mishnah doesn't mean literally Canaan commanded his children to do these things, but rather their cultures, the 5 things he's about to describe, are so ingrained in Canaanite culture that it's as if the father commanded, you have to be this way, because they're so ingrained into their culture. Now get this. Okay, I'm just going to give you a list of 5, and I'll tell you what I think about it. So here's the 5 things that exemplify Canaanite culture, as if their father commanded, this is how you should behave. Number 1, ahavu zeh zeh, love each other. That's number 1, stick together. Number 2, v'ahavu es hagezel, love stealing. Steal at every opportunity. Number 3, v'ahavu es hazima, love promiscuity. Engage in whatever sexual urges that come to you. Number 4, sinu es adonechem, hate your masters, hate your lords. Number 5, al tedabru emes, don't speak a word of truth. This is the list of 5 things that exemplify Canaanite culture. What's the common denominator here? Love each other, love theft, love promiscuity, hate your masters, hate your lords, and don't speak truth. I think this might exemplify old school, maybe not so old school, Middle Eastern tribalism. The tribal nature was such that you identify with your tribe, and all of existence was to maximize tribal benefit, and everybody else, we don't care. So if in old school tribal culture, one tribe would raid another tribe without any moral qualms. They didn't feel like they were breaking some moral code by raiding another tribe and stealing. That's the way it is. We're in this tribe, you're in that tribe, we're more powerful, we stick together, and we're going to go and raid your tribe and steal your women, steal your daughters, steal your money. That's the way tribal communities were. So we love each other, we stick together, we love to steal and promiscuity as long as we're just taking from others. We hate our overlords because these colonialists who are occupying our land, get out of here, we're the tribal landowners here, get away from us. And that's why in history there's constantly rebellions between the tribal communities and the British, before that the Ottomans, and before that the Arabians, and whatever overlords tried to take over these vast swaths of land. The tribals were always fighting them. And don't speak truth, because who cares? As long as you're promoting tribal success, what do we care? This is my understanding of this little description of Canaanite culture. But anyway, feel free to chime in.
Yeah. I find this list makes no sense at all. Because,
why?
Well, there's one element in here that doesn't match any of the other elements. Love one another. How can you compare loving one another with all the other elements? I mean, if you love another, you can't lie to them, you can't rob them, you can't have relations with your loved ones, relatives, or whatever you want to call it. It
seems like the only positive trait.
It's precisely for that reason that I've suggested that we're talking about the tribal nature, because love each other means love each other, And then all the other things are referring to everybody else outside your group.
Oh, so they're
That's
not.
my
they're
suggestion.
not
Love each
doing
other,
these things.
but you don't steal from each other. As a group, you love each other, so steal from everybody else. As a group, you
Oh.
love each other, so be promiscuous with everybody else's daughters. As a group, you love each other, so lie to everybody else. As a group, you love each other, so you hate your overlords. That's why I'm suggesting it's a tribal commentary. So
Yeah,
the first part is how you treat each other, and everything else is how you as a group treat everybody else.
Okay.
Yeah, this is my suggested reading, actually precisely for the question you asked, is what led me to think this.
No, for sure. Yeah.
And it certainly matches the tribal culture up until, and in certain areas, actually, this is still the case. In certain regions, you still have all over the Middle East. Look, the British colonized the Middle East. They chopped it up and made arbitrary countries and gave it to a bunch of people. The local tribes don't necessarily like all this. They actually very much don't. And there's constantly rebellions in all these countries, in Syria and Iraq and Iran and in Yemen and Lebanon. There's always these like tribal revolutions where like local tribes, the Zoroastrians or the Kurds or the I don't know what they call it, the Houthis, all these other different groups who are constantly rebelling against their like overlords, saying like, "What are you guys doing here? Like, why are you guys the lords of this country? This is our tribal land for 3,000 years, right?" And they stick together, and they're happy to steal from other tribes, as long as our tribe survives. It seems that at least in certain regions, this is still a tribe. This is still a reality. I don't know. This is just my suggested reading. I'm no anthropologist, so you're welcome to disagree. But this is my my little thoughts. Okay, do we have time for one more?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So shisha dvarim. So there was four things that four types that no one can handle. It's by the way, it's all part of the same Mishnah. We started before at the beginning. There are last week. There are three people whose life is no life. They're full of anxiety. That was list one. List two is it's all part of the same Mishnaic text. There are four who no one can handle. That was today. There are five things. We're going in like 3, 4, 5 number. Five cultural markers that define the Canaanites. And now there are 6 things. Right? We're going through lists here. It's all the same Mishnaic text. Shisha dvarim, there are 6 things, nemarim, that are said, bisus, about a horse. 6 things about a horse. Number 1, oyev esaznus, he loves promiscuity. Horses like to engage in that kind of activity. They have no fealty toward one mate.
Horseplay.
Horseplay. Number 2, oyev esamilchama, horses love battle. They love war. They run right into battle. The cavalry. Number 3, ruchai gasa. It's got a haughty spirit. It's got this self-confidence, like no other animal. Number 4, moyes esashina. It despises sleep. Horses don't sleep a lot. That was number 4. Was that 4? No, it's 5. It loves promiscuity, loves war, arrogant, and despises sleep. Yeah, there we go. That's
4.
That's 4. Number 5, oichel harbe. It eats a lot. Horses eat a lot. And number 6, moitzi kameya. It only gives out a little. It only produces waste. That's very little compared to what it eats. Now, v'yesh oimim, there are others that add a 7th item to the list. Af mevakesh lahareg es ba'alav b'milchama. If it's so excited about war that if it could, it would even kill its own master in war. It's so enraged in war. Okay, this is the end of the commentary on horses. Well, maybe the Gemara is commenting on horses, and it certainly is commenting on the nature of horses. Now, why should I care about the nature of horses? Right, we had this before. The Gemara discussed, what was the animal the Gemara discussed before? Remember, what was it?
When today? No.
No. Last week we had 3 that hate each other. Chickens hate each other. Dogs hate each other. We had commentary on animals. So here also we're getting commentary on animals, like 7 character traits about horses, right? And it all comes down to it's like this strong, beastly primal urges, promiscuity, war, arrogant, no interest in sleeping, eats tons, doesn't produce too much. It's like this strong.
It's kind of like the alpha male. Sort of.
Exactly. It's like the alpha male, dominant, loves war, and if it could, it would kill its own master in war. You know, a very strong personality. And perhaps the Gemara is not just commenting on literally horses, but also on the inner horse. Right? We all have an animal soul, as we're learning in Tanya in the morning, and everybody has all kinds of animal souls. Some people have an animal soul, it's like a sheep, and that comes with its challenge. Some have an animal soul, it's like an ox, like a donkey, different types, different personality animal souls. And one could have a horse animal soul. This dominant, domineering type personality. Loves to struggle, loves to fight, loves to push. If it could, it would throw off its own master. The animal soul would be self-detriment if it could. It's so beastly and alpha male, and takes in a lot. It produces little because it's all about its own conquest. And perhaps the lesson is that it's the same horse that gets all the stuff done in your life. In the old days, certainly. It's your travel companion. It's your workhorse. It's the one that will take you into battle fearlessly. If a horse is harnessed correctly, it's the most useful of all animals. And even graceful if that power is harnessed. And maybe in there is a lesson that a person has an inner beast, as a horse. Recognize all of its faults, recognize all of that negativity, or to use modern parlance, the possible toxicity. But if it's harnessed correctly, this could become the protector of the home, could become the breadwinner of the home, right? It could be the one willing to defend the family, defend right? The same character traits that make the horse such a beast is also what makes it so useful and so powerful, and so much things can get done as a result of the fact that the horse has all these kinds of personality traits. So maybe perhaps that's another layer of what the Gemara is saying here, beyond just commenting on horses, which is, I guess, interesting in and of itself, but also commenting on the inner animal, and that we must recognize what kind of animal we have, and if you have a horse, know its capacities, know the negativity it's capable of, and simultaneously how all that can be harnessed, literally harnessed, and figuratively, in a positive direction. God willing, tomorrow we still have more on the list. So we went through a list of 3, a list of 4, a list of 5, a list of 6, right? The 6 things. What was the 6? Did we have 6? Yeah, 6 things about a horse. And then tomorrow we're going to a list of 7. So there's still more lists coming, and more social and character building commentary. Some very interesting stuff coming up, God willing. Okay, have a wonderful day.
Good day.
Right.
See you tomorrow morning, God willing.
See you.
Take care. Bye.